Just explain kind of who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into like kind of like your story and everything.
I am Jake Dowell, the athletic director at Ferris High School, and I've been in this role. This is my first year officially in the role. Last year I was an interim athletic director as well. Been a teacher since 2004, but I've been here at Ferris since 2013. So.
Okay, kind of explain like where you're from, where you went to school, kind of why you are interested in working with the youth and things like that.
Gotcha. Well, I had a weird, unique upbringing, I guess. Kind of a little weird, being that my dad was in the military at two different times. He was in during Vietnam, did 10 years out between 78 or 70. He was out for 10 years, and in that 10-year period is when I was born in North Idaho. So my upbringing basically began in North Idaho, and then after I was about 5, we moved into, my dad joined the military and began moving all around. And so I lived in San Diego, Hawaii, back to San Diego, the Bay Area for most of my upbringing. After my junior year, my dad got transferred to Everett Naval Station, and he was about ready to retire there. And so my dad felt pretty bad because it was my third high school that I was going to have to go to, so he let me pick. Internet was just coming on there, so I did a little bit of research at that time, and I went to Cascade High School, and it was a good experience for me, but it was weird too. I needed a lot of help my senior year and support from one of my counselors, Don Jensen, and I was new to this area, and I really had spent most of my experiences in California and loved and had many positive experiences there. And so the colleges I applied for were Long Beach State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Washington State. And I only applied to Washington State because my counselor had gone there and he made me, and I didn't know where Pullman even was. And sure enough, a few weeks later, I got those rejection letters from all the California schools and different levels of rejection. I think the one from Long Beach State is, you're not on the wait list, don't bother reapplying. Like, it was almost that harsh. And I was trying to pursue baseball opportunities at that time. So I intended to go to any of those schools and walk on. And I went to Washington. I ended up getting accepted to Washington State. And my parents kind of advocated for me to pursue that opportunity. And so I went there and I got into Washington State. I initially wanted to do, I thought about education. I thought about, after a period of time, doing politics and actually joining the Navy as a naval intelligence officer. I was really close to doing that, meaning I was speaking with recruiters. I went up and did a physical here in Spokane at the Federal Building. That physical, though, I didn't pass the color vision aspect of that test. And so at that point in time, it was October of 2003, I was going to be a double major in history and political science, and I was going to graduate in 6 weeks. So I graduated in December, shortly after I failed that physical, and I had a political science and a history degree, but no pathway to do naval intelligence. And so I went back home to see with my parents after I graduated from college, and I kind of just I couldn't go back to that, and so I didn't really know what I was gonna do. I was fortunate to have a relationship with my future wife. She was a nurse, and she came up here to Spokane. I ended up coming over here to Spokane and basically got connected to coaching and athletics. And out at West Valley, coaching baseball, that guy said, "Hey, you're kind of good at this, being around youth and coaching and stuff like that. And so why don't you consider getting into education?" So that's when I began Eastern Washington's Master's in Teaching program. The Master's in Teaching program really was very manageable or doable for me, and it was actually fun. And so that's kind of when I got into education at that point, and I've kind of been gas pedal since. So.
Okay, kind of explain give me one course at WSU that you really enjoyed. other than like that you didn't think that you were gonna enjoy?
I think, well, that I didn't think I was, well, the first part is, I got two. History of baseball. But that was critical for me. It was transformational, I would say, for me in many regards, because like it still shapes the way I'm able to speak to my children, my own family today, history in baseball. And then I'd say Anthropology 101 is the other one.
Anthropology, yeah.
My first year in college, my first semester, I had a full load of classes, and I had anthropology, sociology, all these things and stuff like that. Well, Anthropology 101 was a legit hard class, and she was a no-nonsense type of professor, and I earned an A- in that. And going into college not without having a lot of academic competence, the fact that I earned an A- in college on a rigorous course, dude, I was motivated to chase the highest grades I could possibly achieve. So I took a very mathematical approach towards future courses in college so that I knew what exact grade I needed to get on finals, and I knew exactly. That's how I was able to double major and do a lot of weird stuff in college, is because I just challenged myself, and that professor gave me confidence. History of baseball was transformational because I knew history, I knew baseball, but I didn't fully understand how much things intertwined. And if you look specifically like at civil rights, we were just talking about Bob Gibson a minute ago. And one of the best books to come out of that class was October of 1964. It looks at the 1964 World Series and why the St. Louis Cardinals were successful at going up against the New York Yankees. And some of it has to do with those policy, the Cardinals and the Yankees policies towards integration. The Yankees were slower and the Cardinals were quicker, and the Cardinals that attributed to their success. So I think history of baseball was a thing that allowed me to be comfortable as a baseball guy, but have in-depth conversations and understand the social implications of sports. And so I'm in athletics right now because I love sports, but there's a lot of social implications for what takes place within sports or around it. Yeah.
You said, you walked on at WSU?
I tried to walk on the baseball team.
Okay.
I wasn't the most academically inclined.
Okay.
I had a math class during the tryout period from 3 to 4 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I remember my math professor had like a thick accent. I'm not mathematically inclined. It was a super big challenge. I had to pick a couple spots to miss that class, and I sometimes I couldn't miss the class, so I'm missing a tryout as a walk-on so you could go to a math class isn't really excusable at that. It wasn't excusable at that time. So the only guy that made the team as a walk-on had pitched the year before at San Diego State. He had a 94-mile-an-hour slider.
Oh, you're kidding.
I wasn't going to be picked, but I was fine. Coincidentally, one of the guys who cut me is an athletic director at Mount Spokane.
Really?
And so we've had these conversations since then. We have a healthy, positive relationship, but just, those people who at some point in your life might have to tell you no, you might get to spend company with them later, and it might be okay.
Yeah.
So.
And this is something that I always like, that I'm trying to learn now. Just because somebody tells you no now doesn't mean it's not going to be yes later.
Yeah. Yeah, and the no then, I mean, the head coach at that time, he ended up making some pretty foolish mistakes that ended up costing him his job. So I was fortunate to have a roommate who was on the baseball team at WSU. He was scholarshiped, and he was from Montana, and he was like a love of life type of guy. Hold on one second. Tanner Kaler was my roommate. He was from Montana. He was a love of life type of guy, great baseball player, not real academically inclined. Unfortunately, he ended up passing away not too many years ago. And I did experience a lot of the baseball things that were happening. A lot of those guys that came on when I was a freshman didn't finish because, like I said, it wasn't necessarily the most healthy culture that ended up, yeah.
How important is it to have how do you gain young adults trust, or maybe young kids trust? How do you build a rapport with them? How do you do that, like being a teacher and being like an athletic director and stuff?
Well, I think to build a rapport, you gotta be vulnerable. You gotta be yourself, and you gotta allow others to be themselves as well. And so I think that my upbringing, kind of being pulled around a little bit with my father's work and stuff like that, I got immersed into new situations all the time, and it wasn't always comfortable as a little kid trying to make new friends. But I do think those experiences benefit me in my job now. And so I think with kids, one thing is you got to be super patient with people. You can't expect people to open up on arrival just because you're wearing a badge or a hat or anything, or because their siblings maybe liked you. That doesn't imply that person's gonna like you. So you gotta treat each person as an individual. You gotta try your best, be patient, and you gotta let it be a process. So like, if you have a hard conversation today, try not, that shouldn't be the last conversation that you're gonna have. Try to start a new conversation the next day, and try to keep those conversations going. Recognize that there's something for growth. I think the other thing is about coming from the classroom or coming from a teaching perspective. There's 180 days on the contract for teachers, and it's easy to kind of like focus. You only get 180 hours or 180 opportunities with those kids, and you really do have to cherish and value and prioritize those things. And so I think that that you could be patient to an extent, but you also really do have to prioritize and look within the constraints and really try to develop relationships with all kids within the amount of time that you're allotted or afforded them. I do think that it is in some ways easier in a classroom to do it than it is in some of these other capacities, because unfortunately there are some relationships that are not that lack the depth that I wish we could develop. So I do think sometimes it does take time, and you got to allow yourself patience, and you got to recognize the depth of relationships that you have in other areas of your life that are crucial to your strength as well. So like your family, if you're not fostering those healthy relationships within your family, you're not going to have the capacity or the strength to go out and develop future other relationships with other people. The mom, like the depth of the relationship many people have with their mothers is a critical one, and I think that if we don't foster those relationships within ourselves, if we don't have that high regard or that high respect for a motherly type of figure, a grandmother figure, an auntie, or somebody like that, then I think for me at least, those relationships with my aunties, with my mom, those are the ones that really, I think, gave me the confidence to say, yeah, like every human's important. Go have a relationship with every freaking human that crosses your face, because it is critically important. Yeah.
What is being a Saxon to you? What does a Saxon represent?
We got homecoming coming up in not this week but next week, and so I was thinking of it like a warrior of like a northern land, like a warrior, but like of a I think being a Saxon is like a warrior of an unspecified territory or a northern space. Yeah, geography doesn't really matter so much for who we are, but I do like the idea of being a Saxon from an unknown land or an undefined territory, and I think that is like a because that entails or that implies like a level of spirit, and I do think that like to an extent my experiences are very aligned or in sync with absolutely that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't have control about where you're going to be forced to fight. My father, when he was in the Navy, he didn't get to choose where he got deployed. I didn't get to choose as a little kid where I got to move. And I didn't go everywhere and fight when I was a little kid, but I went everywhere and I enjoyed life to its fullest. And I think that's kind of what a Saxon is. Go wherever you are and do it to its fullest and never accept defeat. So
Most definitely. I think that's really important. I was thinking about that as I was talking with some friends a couple of days ago. We were talking about that we all graduated at 16 and how it's just so long ago, how long ago that was and things like that. But like, I was thinking like, what does it mean? Like when people ask me like, whenever I tell people I went to Ferris, people are like, oh dang, like, so I'm always thinking like, dang, I wonder what being a Saxon means to like other people as well, like, and what it means to like.
You think about history in those times of like, tribal groups and moving throughout, any lands. There's a certain level of those war. If you look at like Gladiator or some of those old goofy movies and stuff like that, there's a little chaoticness. There's a eclectic reflection of people sometimes. Hopefully, there's some barbaric and some weird behaviors that are at play. But there is sometimes also like a common vision or a common motivator to kind of get something, and I think that. That is kind of where we're at right now. I think we are in Saxon land, we are changing, we are shifting who we are in our identity. But I think that's aligned with who we always were, who we kind of should have been. And it's okay. It's okay to be kind of messy and a messy warrior, spirited, pulling new people into the fight. It's not one warrior standing alone above the rest. It's never felt that way here at Ferris for me. It felt like a group of people moving together in one direction.
What kind of talking about like maybe like your new job? What does like the hiring process look like if you guys are gonna hire a coach for like basketball or like cheerleading or something? What are the requirements that a coach needs to be viewed as like a worthy candidate? What experiences and stuff?
Well,
what are you looking for?
Yeah, we got 19 different athletic offerings, and so I do think that you could take those 19 and you could alphabetize them, or you could rank them in different, which way their financial impact and their student participation. You could rank them in all sorts of ways. So I think that if you look at those 19, what you want to understand, or what I strive to understand, is what is the value of that thing, that sport or that activity to the students that it's intended to serve. And I think that the reason why I say as far as hiring coaches for that starts there is because what we do in gymnastics might be a little bit different than what we do in football. And we might be doing something different with girls cross country than we would with, wrestling. And so I think that you need to give respect to each individual sport. Gymnastics and volleyball are two things that I've been given increased responsibilities in my role in the GSL. And I think that though I've learned a lot by asking other people regarding gymnastics. So last season, I understand now we have level 10 judges. I'm understanding some of the more technical aspects of that sport. We have a fantastic gymnastics coach, but in order to properly support gymnastics moving forward, we're going to need more technical expertise. So, like in boys, in girls tennis, there was another thing. I had a guy who had, solid vision, solid mission. He didn't really have the expertise or the training to go along with being a tennis coach. So we needed to kind of go in a different direction in that regard. So I think sometimes people will have all that expertise and they will have all that that knowledge of a sport perhaps, but then sometimes it can be challenging to communicate it or convey that knowledge out. And then does that always matter? I mean, it kind of does, but if it's not the head coach, even though the head coach might possess all that knowledge, maybe we can use an assistant to communicate that knowledge out or to structure how that knowledge of that sport is conveyed to the athletes participating in it. So depending on the sport, depending on the strengths of the coach, depending on the needs of the school, depending on some of those things is kind of how we approach hiring and making sure that we have the right people. You got to be aware of the students that you're serving at all times. And so I had a gymnast approach me the other day, was asking, about some other level of participation, and they were concerned. And so if you don't have a relationship with the student athletes that you serve, and people aren't having those conversations with you, then you're not going to be making the best informed decisions. Sometimes that means you got to go to a young student athlete and say, hey, listen, I heard what you said, and I see it, but we're going to go in this direction, and I think it's going to be okay. I really, I hope you're still part of us and moving forward. So sometimes you do make those things, and sometimes parents have these expectations. I think some parents sometimes come in the off season, as soon as the season ends, and they come up with these suggestions that are $1 million ideas. I don't have $1 million budget. And so you kind of just got to be real with them and be like, yeah, I would love to hire, Urban Meyer. I suppose I may be a bad example, but
Shoot, if he's going to win,
Florida.
I mean, we're having that. I'm a Nebraska fan. We're having that problem. They're talking about Urban Meyers, and I'm like, shoot, if we're going to win, I'll take 2 bad press conferences, the 2 ugly, the ones that if he's gonna bring in money, he's gonna win. Urban Meyers brings people from California to Alabama just to go to school there because they just want to see. They want to know what it feels like to be in a winning. Or to be a part of a winning team. And
in Nebraska, they're paying that Frost guy some money.
They were, and
they still are.
They still, a $14 million buyout.
So the people that are signing off on that, I think there are going to be some John Does and some Joe Schmoes behind the scene that might also lose their jobs as a part of that, because that's a lot of money leaving that university. And
it was Bill Moose. Bill Moose was the athletic director at Nebraska, who was a
train wreck.
At
WSU.
He did good at WSU. Yes, he did really good at WSU. But then when he went to Nebraska, thinking that WSU was Nebraska. When you gotta be in every little detail. You gotta be in every little, it's the Big Ten. It's not the Pac. Nothing against the Pac-12, but
be careful who you hire, though.
Most definitely, yes.
I've been, the people that are responsible for some of these decisions. Nothing is made in isolation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. New stadium here in Spokane. What are your thoughts on it? And kind of for the football, it was football and soccer and all of that.
It is good that at this point in time, I feel encouraged because it is a joint use facility that will be used for soccer as well as football, and I do think there is a need for high quality facilities in our community. I think there is a sharp and acute need for well developed facilities in our community.
Okay.
It's hard to, yeah.
How is it? What are some of the struggles that you see, or what are some of the challenges that you face that you didn't see maybe being a teacher or things like that, coming into this new role?
Yes. So we are old. We are 60 years old here at Ferris. But sometimes it feels like we're building we're building some things new, and we've been part of the same. So some structures have not changed whatsoever, like the fact that we're part of SPS and all those things. However, some of the budgetary stuff is I'm shocked and surprised at the opportunity for ambiguity and some of those types of things, and the opportunity for mistakes. And so I do think that, like, in the classroom is a safe place for students to make mistakes, and you kind of guide those behaviors. And most of it's, as long as it's not unsafe for other people, you can accept some of those behaviors within the classroom. As far as looking at the health of a system and a structure, I'm surprised that there's not more safeguards put in place to prevent people from getting into unsafe places. And so I do know we are a big structure, and we do try our best, and we have to assume positive intent. But I do think that there is a level of anxiety with some of those opportunities that are allowed to present themselves. And I think one of my whole mindsets is to not be, chasing money and pursuing of those types of things. And so I hope that kind of helps, but there is a level of uneasiness about all of it.
Yeah. I know you kind of just touched on it. Explain a little bit on how money is allocated towards sporting events. How much money, does each school get the same allotted money, or does Gonzaga Prep, well, I guess Gonzaga Prep's their own entity, let's not say that. Let's say Mount Spokane or North Central. Does North Central get the same allotted money as Bell C?
No. So some of those allocations are different, and some of those things, to be honest, I'm newer in my role, and so I don't have a full understanding of how NC, Shadle, Rogers, or LC are getting their allocations. I do think that, Prep, take them totally in a separate conversation, but not all the way separate. But Mount Spokane and Meade, they're a different school district, so how they allocate and fund their athletics is a separate matter that I'm not really aware of. So, as a mindset, I haven't wandered to my neighbor's fence too much to figure out exactly how they're doing it.
Most definitely.
I'm trying to fully clean my backyard before I get to my neighbor's fence, and so I don't fully know. I generally as far as funding and budgetary stuff goes, it's on an as-needed basis. And so Odell and I, if coaches come to us with a need, as long as they can communicate the need clearly, and it's a need. It's not a hey, we need these golden shoelaces because they're gonna lace them up super tight. It's like, dude, you can figure out another way to do that. If the basketball team doesn't have basketballs, then we can't play no hoops. And so we just got to look at each one. It's on an as-need basis. We are trying to establish stronger revenue streams and also convey to coaches the need to fundraise. And I do think that when we use the word fundraise, we think about Girl Scout cookies at the grocery store or something along those lines. I think that fundraising from 2022 moving forward will look vastly different than what it did ever before. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities for money and people to bring money safely into schools for the benefit of the communities. But
Okay, I have two more questions for you real quick.
Gotcha.
Let's talk about the Mariners real quick. Give me your thoughts on the Mariners. Explain to me this season, what are your thoughts on it? And then give me something on Julio, because Julio's my guy. I love Julio.
I love Julio.
Yeah, Julio's the guy, so just give me your thoughts on him, man.
Well, somebody asked me recently if I could watch 162 baseball games. I look him dead in the face and said, of course. I could I could eat that much ice cream. You bet.
I swear, that's a good analogy, yes.
The Mariners, I have a good friend in the College and Career Center, and I was just talking to her today, and she's feeling a little bit low because last night they lost to the Rangers and stuff like that. And it's just like, guys, come on. It's kind of like the Zags. They're going to get real close, but they ain't gonna get no championship trophy.
Yeah, well, they're going to make it to I think people think they're not going to make it to the playoffs.
They can make it to the playoffs, but that could end in disappointment too.
Yeah, it always does. Only one team wins.
Right? So it's okay. It's part of the process, and there could be something to learn. Julio's worth building around. There's been a handful of other guys that I thought we should have built around too, like Ketel Marte, Taiwan Walker, James Paxton, and I've been wrong on a lot of those guys. We held on to Felix Hernandez for a long time, but
Felix is goated though. Felix is like,
he brought some special memories there, right?
Yeah, even though they didn't win.
And 0 playoffs.
Yeah. That was partially though. I remember games where it would end 1-0.
Yeah.
And he would give up one run in the 5th inning, 7th inning, and
he
would go 8 strong, 9 strong innings and give up one run, and that was it.
He brought passion to Seattle in September, and a lot of times in September there wasn't no good baseball happening except for when Felix was pitching. And so I think I still remember the first baseball game I ever went to was in 1989 in San Diego when they were playing. It was the Giants were playing the Padres. Will Clark and Tony Gwynn had an epic batting championship race going, and I saw it in the middle of summer. I'll never forget walking into that tunnel and seeing that many seats and that vibe. Just went back to Safeco this summer and saw a game with my 2 boys and my dad, and there's still that buzz and that electricity around Major League Baseball. And I think that, even if, I don't know, that's something of just being in that environment, the smells and all that things is a positive thing. And I'll fight traffic and parking and all that stuff to sit in those in the stadium seats again. So it's something special about being there. Julio, my kids love him. He's got great energy. The thing that's a little bit hard is some of those guys that sometimes make mistakes. Robinson Cano was beloved in our household too, and
Robinson Cano was the chief of the second baseman right there. He made it look so fluid.
He smiled he brought happiness to the game, and I thought he blew bubbles, and he was a friendly type of personality.
Cool dude.
Yeah. And so I think some of those types of things you just got to be careful for. I do like the Mariners though. I just like being around the ballpark. Julio's got great energy. Yeah.
Why? Okay, one quick question for you. Why do players I honestly thought Jared Kelenic would be better than what he is doing now.
Yeah.
How come Julio, who is 20 years old, is working out so well? He's just tearing it out the park, but I think Jared Kelenic's probably 23. He's probably seen 3 more years of baseball, 3 more years. How is it that somebody like Julio Rodriguez could pass him up, or maybe not even so much pass him up, but he can play better on the field at this current moment?
One other name, I want to mention the other one, Fernando Tatis. That was my boy Hank, and that was his favorite player, and for a while. And I was like, yeah, Tatis is pretty legit. I like that guy. I think Kelenic right now, honestly, I think that one of the things that factors in, and it kind of goes back to that history of baseball class, and I'm trying to have conversations with my son Willie right now about baseball and stuff. It has to be their upbringing, where they come from, and what drives you, and what motivates you, and this feeling and this sense. And I don't know the specifics about Jared Kelenic. I know who he is as a player. I know he was hitting under 200, and the hopes and the goals for him was to be about a 300 hitter and do much different. I think that if you're able to truly love and enjoy, and it's part of your being, and it's not a pressure, but it's part of your almost your comfort or your being, then I do think that helps your performance. I think it helps Julio. Unfortunately, I think Robinson Cano was great before he did Peds. I think Tatis was great before he did Peds. I wonder sometimes about guys like Kelenic and why they want to pursue it. And I think that what I'm trying to tell my kids today in any sport is that if you don't really love doing the hard work, then you might not want to be around it. And I think that sometimes guys like Jared Kelenic put it in its box so much where the work becomes consuming. It consumes them. So I think that what I want to do with my kids is just make sure that they love the process and they love being around that, being around the game as much as possible and figure out different ways. And so on Instagram, I love watching. There's this guy named Trotsky Baseball. He was a guy for the Milwaukee Brewers down in the Dominican. He has these academies, and he does work down there in the Dominican at some of these baseball academies on behalf of the Milwaukee Brewers is one of his organizations he's connected with. And they're working on terrible facilities, and but they're getting work done, and they got passion, and they're going for it. And I think though when you go from the Dominican and some of those baseball academies that have that don't have the nicest things, nicest field conditions or gloves and any of those things, but they know how to do the work, and then you bring them onto even the Vista Stadium here in Spokane. And they can pick it. Like those guys will be a glove. They'll figure those things out. And then you just got to figure out a couple other things along the way, and then you're going to get a guy like Julio Rodriguez, and they're going to be exactly the worth the investment that the Mariners have given him. So I worry about the long-term health of American baseball, like in the United States, and how we're interacting with our youth, because Little League looks like they get it right when you see that on TV in August. But then after you graduate from elementary school, what happens to those kids? Because I think some of that love gets lost. And I wish, Jared Kalenic, I know at one point he loved it, but I think it's too much, sometimes that pressure.
Yeah. One more real quick. What is your definition of success?
Definition of success, got to be patient. Definition of success, I think moving things forward. I think that's the simplest thing is that success is moving things forward. It doesn't have to be final. It's not. Success is not winning. That's not it. But success is moving things forward. And so I think that if for us here in Saxon land to have a successful year, we need to move the culture forward. I don't think that success this year would mean that we hung a banner, our 25th banner from the rafters. We got 24, and they're perfect. I want more banners for sure. Success in years will be probably measured differently, and you can allow your definition of success to kind of shift over time. But I think we do kind of success to me is moving things forward in a positive direction. I might not be here forever, but whoever comes after me, I hope to leave things in a state so that they can pick it up, and then they can get championships.
Okay, sweet. I love that. I just want to say that I really appreciate you.
I love you, Dave. Sean is real, man.
Yes. Before we go, I told you this before, but I really appreciated you, especially in high school. You were one of my favorite teachers. Just the way that you made everybody feel included, and there was never a dull moment. I felt like our fifth period class was probably one of the most stacked, best classes that I think I've ever been a part of. Just so much fun, and there was always so much debate, and there was so much but never once did I ever feel judged or any. I can't speak for everybody, but I just felt like that was one big family there.
My man, you challenged me as well, so I couldn't have done it without you.
Swear. I appreciate you.
For sure.
Yes, thank you for taking time with me.
I'm
sorry to take you so long.
No, we're good.
Yes.
We'll do it again.